because poaching can have a really, really bad reputation. It can often lend to really bland protein, and it is a lot of waste of time and money, because what do? We buy all these ingredients at the grocery store to come home, chop up a ton of vegetables, herbs, spices, stocks, broths, to come up with this big court bouillon. Then we poach the protein, and then we dump all of those goodies down the drain. Well, this is a very, very sophisticated take on poaching. This is actually one of my favorite recipes of all the 18 shows that we have available for you on Holland America Line. It's very, very refined and very, from a pocket standpoint, we're going to fully utilize everything that we've come home from the market with, which is always great for us at home. So the first thing I want to do is get our poaching situation assembled here. I have one lemon that I have lined up on the bottom of my stainless steel skillet. I'm going to take a second lemon, and we're going to cut this into about 1/4-inch slices, just like this. Being very careful not to cut our fingers in front of a live audience, because that can be embarrassing. And now we're just going to line the rest of the bottom of the pan here with our lemons. Next in line, we have some herb stems. I have some tarragon stems, and I have some parsley stems. I reserved the leaves that are covered in a paper towel later on, and we're going to use them later on in our herb and caper vinaigrette that's going to go on top of our poached salmon. But in this case, we want these stems, and we'll talk all about this process in just a little bit more time. Next, we have the shallot. Yes, very good. We need an aromatic for our poaching liquid, so I'm just going to very thinly slice my shallot. That one got away. There's always a straggler in there. And we're just going to scatter the shallot along the bottom of the pan. And now we need a cooking liquid, which is going to be equal parts of white wine. Yep, I know. I love love me some wine, mojitos. I think you can kind of figure out what I like to do in my spare time. And add a little bit of water. And now we want to bring this up to a gentle boil. Now when we say gentle boil, we use a lot of technical terminology in the test kitchen, but the gentle boil compared to the rapid boil is the blah, 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 and the gentle boil is more like a simmer, is a blah, 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 blah. So, make sure you write that down if you have a pen and paper. I think it's B-L-U-B, B-L-U-B. Anyway, let's talk about tarragon for a second, because that joke did not go over very well. Tarragon, it goes great with seafood. It has a very mild anise flavor to it. It kind of looks like rosemary, if rosemary was wilting. But it's really, really easy to find in the grocery store, and I just love it. If you're not a fan of tarragon, you can certainly maybe use some thyme or some thyme would be nice as well with thyme, as well with the parsley. Parsley, of course, is always a great deal. Now we want to bring this up to a gentle simmer, as I said, and so while that's happening, I'd like for us to skin our salmon. We don't want the skin on these salmons because we need that liquid to penetrate the salmon so that it can in fact cook, which is always beneficial. And this can be very easy to do at home. As easy as removing the salmon from the sheet pan that I did earlier. What you want to do when you bring this home, just so you know, you're really saving a lot of money, not only by coming home with that center cut piece, because as soon as your fishmonger or any butcher has taken a knife in any way to the protein, it's costing you more money. So it's really great practice to learn how to do this at home, and on your handout we've taught you how to do this as well. You can do this with a paring knife if you wish, but in this case what we're just trying to do first is give ourselves a bit of a handle. So between the salmon and the skin, now we have a handle to hold on to, and you can use a towel for some friction if you wish, but in this case I'm just kind of holding on to that skin, very quickly running my knife through, and now we remove the salmon skin. The first time I ever butchered a whole salmon at one of the restaurants I worked at in New Jersey, I swung it around like a victory flag. And then I didn't work there anymore. Here we are on board Holland America Line. There we go. So once again, what I want to do is take my knife and run it between the flesh and the skin, giving yourself a little bit of a handle, being very careful. There you have your little handle guy. God, the salmon is so beautiful. And running through in one swift motion. It's something that you want to do confidently. You don't want to stop. Notice how I turn this around because I have a little bit more flesh on this side. But you don't want to stop and go, otherwise you're going to wear and tear through the flesh. So just do it with purpose and you'll be all set. So we're going to talk a little bit more about our poaching method in the test kitchen, but in the meantime I'm going to add our salmon directly on top of our lemons, cover it, and now we're going to go into the test kitchen with my friend Dan, and he's going to teach us the differences between wild and farm-raised salmon. So take it away, Nelson.
Most home cooks pay close attention to internal temperature when cooking a steak, where we know just 5 degrees means the difference between rare and medium rare. But few people pay that much attention when dealing with fish, which is really too bad, because even fatty fish like salmon can go from tender and moist to chalky and dry in a flash. In the test kitchen, we used an instant read digital thermometer to tell when salmon is done, and we've always preferred it cooked to 125 degrees. For the ideal balance of firm yet silky flesh. The majority of the salmon we cook is farmed Atlantic, but as we cook more wild species, we started to wonder if 125 was maybe a bit too high. To find out, we bought multiple fillets of the 4 most common species of wild Pacific salmon: king, also known as Chinook, sockeye, coho, and chum. We cooked samples of each to both 120 degrees and 125 degrees sous vide, or sealed in a plastic bag and cooked in a temperature-controlled water bath. We also did the same for samples of farmed Atlantic salmon. We then asked tasters, blind to the differences in internal temperature, to pick which sample had the best texture. Everyone preferred the coho, sockeye, and chum samples cooked to 120 degrees, and the farmed Atlantic cooked to 125. While a few folks preferred the king sample at 125 degrees, the majority preferred 120. These results may sound surprising. After all, salmon is salmon, right? Well, not exactly. It turns out that farmed Atlantic salmon differs in 2 important ways from the half-dozen commercial wild varieties caught in the Pacific Ocean. 1, due to their sedentary life, the collagen protein in farmed Atlantic salmon contains less chemical cross-links than in wild varieties, which translates into softer flesh. And 2, farmed Atlantic salmon contains more fat than any wild variety, and up to 4 times as much fat as the leanest species. And we know that fat provides the perception of juiciness when cooked. So, with naturally firmer flesh and less fat to provide lubrication, wild salmon can have the texture of overcooked fish even at 125 degrees. By cooking wild salmon to just 120 degrees, the muscle fibers contract less and stay moist and tender. This is the science of good cooking.
Well, there you have it. That is Dan Souza, everyone. He is now the editor-in-chief of Cooks Illustrated magazine. He is our little science geek, and I absolutely adore him. But now let's get back to our poached salmon. Let's talk a little bit about this poaching process, as I said. The first thing we did was we sliced those lemons and laid them on the bottom of our our stainless steel skillet. And why did we do that? Well, lemon and fish are a classic pairing, and it also helps to denature protein. The citric acid is going to help break it down. If you've ever had ceviche, it's a similar process. But what we found was that when we had the fillets in direct contact with the bottom of the pan, they were cooking a little bit too quickly. So we're sort of MacGyvering a poaching raft by having that layer of lemon. Not only is the lemon going into the salmon, but it's also keeping it from contacting the bottom of the pan. Next in line, we had our herb stems, the tarragon stems and the parsley stems. How many of us throw away our herb stems, and when we come home at the end of the day, I know I'm guilty of it as well, but in this case they do pack a lot of flavor. They're a little bit too potent to eat raw, but in this case they're really going to create and develop nice flavor in our broth. Next we have our shallot, because we need an aromatic as well. We're creating this court bouillon, which is French for a short boiled stock, really developing a lot of flavors very quickly, which is going to add great flavor again to our salmon. Next in line we had our cooking liquids. We had equal parts of white wine and water. Now that might sound like a really high ratio of wine, if that even exists, if that's even a thing, to have too much wine. Anyone? Okay, we'll get there in time. I'm really sorry, but you're gonna learn to love my puns. You're not going to. I'm really sorry. But moving forward, this actually came back to high school chemistry. We actually found that by adding alcohol to water, we lower the temperature at which water can boil. So in this case, what we're creating is more heat transfer, more steam, so we're actually cooking the fish much faster than had we not added any alcohol. When it comes to white wines to cook with, you don't have to burn a hole through your wallet, but we do like to avoid oaky Chardonnays for white wine cookings. We do like to use a nice crisp Sauvignon Blanc is really good. But what I always like to say is always use something that you wouldn't mind sipping alongside while you're cooking this dish at home. So let's check on our salmon. Hopefully, oh, there we go. It kind of went to a rapid blub blub. That's okay. We're going to turn this down a little bit. Oh, this smells so good. It smells like salmon, which is always a good thing when you're cooking salmon. Another thing to point out with this poaching process, what we found in the test kitchen is that when you're completely submerging a protein in that cooking liquid, the protein flavor leaches out into the liquid itself. By having the salmon sort of above, we're still maintaining the flavor of salmon while we're also developing this great sauce. And we're really in good shape here. So we're just going to let this sit here. As I said, wild salmon 120, farm-raised salmon 125. But we are going to remove this from the pan. So I'm going to very carefully take my fish spatula. As you can imagine, this is a very low and slow method of cooking, so the salmon is going to be very delicate. So please be very careful of that. I'm going to take my fish spatula. This is a great way to get under the entire fillet of the salmon itself. And we're just going to drain this on some paper towels to get rid of any of this excess liquid here. And when it comes to poached salmon, if anyone's ever had poached salmon, maybe at a wedding or a banquet or an event like that, you know that poached salmon doesn't necessarily have to be served warm. It can certainly be served at room temperature or cold, but if you want to wait and have this warm while we do the next step, you can certainly tent it with a little bit of foil just to keep it nice and warm. Now, ordinarily speaking, this is why we're using a nice wide skillet, because we're not going to dump this down the drain. We're going to turn this back up to a high heat and reduce it. So we're concentrating those flavors, the lemon, the wine, the water. We're concentrating all that water flavor that we got from using a half a cup of water, as well as the shallots and the herb stems. So it should just take a couple minutes or so. I've already done this for you to sort of save some time, because I know we have a lot more activities going on around the ship today. But I am going to strain this into my bowl here. Now, as you can see how much flavor we've gotten out of these goodies by reducing and concentrating these flavors. They can no longer deliver anything to us, but thank you for your time. We appreciate you as ingredients. So what is this going to be? This is going to act as the base to our herb and caper vinaigrette. So it's really fabulous. We're not throwing anything away here, which I can't emphasize enough is just a fabulous way to cook at home. So we're ready to assemble this. Now remember, I did reserve the herb stems. We have our tarragon stems here. We have our parsley stems here. When it comes to parsley, we really prefer to use Italian flat leaf as opposed to curly. We just found it has a much more superior flavor. But I'm just going to run my knife through the herbs. Again, the tarragon, a little bit of that anise licorice note, and parsley is just, I love the smell of just fresh cut parsley. It's so refreshing. Into our bowl we go of our base. Now, I don't know if you've heard of this. This is called a shallot, and what we did is we minced it up. And I know you're probably like, Sam, enough with the shallots already. But what we found is that we have the shallots simmering in this liquid. This is a very buttery, very soft textured fish here. We want to add a little crunch, so we're going to add some of these minced shallots to sort of bring them back to life. And also so that you can't forget that they're here, because we're really proud of our shallots at home. Next in line, I have some capers. Yes, delicious capers. I did rinse these off. They can be a little bit salty. Make sure to do that when you come home. You know, these are actually immature flower buds is what a caper is. And the tinier they are, the more expensive they are because they are hand-picked. So it doesn't really matter that the flavor is a little bit more refined, I guess, on the tinier capers, but either way is okay with us. But think about capers, smoked salmon, cream cheese, a schmear on the bagel. Hello, yes. Capers and salmon are a match made in heaven. If you've never had a caper, the best way I can describe that flavor would be a briny pea. That's P-E-A, by the way. Briny pea. Anyway, okay, we're gonna... everyone's still tired from traveling, I bet, right? That's what I tell myself in the mirror tonight when I practice tomorrow's jokes. All right, so we're going to add our capers to our vinaigrette.